This is Undaunted.Life, a man's podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Thompson. Let's get into it. Joby, I may have started something that I can't go back and undo. You want to know what it is?
Please tell me.
All right, so I'm just minding my own business, and I decide to ask you a question about baby Hitler. Super innocent question, very easy to answer. And I swear, once every 2 or 3 days now, I'm getting an email from some jackwagon, some slappy, that's like, hey, let me answer a question that you didn't ask, and here's my 74 points as to why I'm right. Why can't people just understand I get to ask the questions? I'm on this side of the camera. What's wrong with these people?
I don't know. Something's wrong with me too, because that question, like, you're living rent free in my brain because of that question. I think about it too much. I do, man.
Joby, I have been looking for a way to live rent free in your brain, and I've tried making fun of you. I've tried, challenging you to jiu-jitsu matches. All the things. I've tried to hit that one feeling you have left, and none of it's worked until that question. I got to tell you, that might be the accomplishment of the year. I might need a trophy. Can y'all send me something?
Yeah, we can. I'll come out with best of 1122 and you'll get that.
Bad out. All right. Well, we need to get into the actual questions for the day. I don't think any of the ones today, well, there might be one or two that might live rent free in your brain, but this is kind of a pre-question for the first question, because you previously mentioned that Ryan Horn is your favorite forging tabler. But since then, it has been revealed that he has an unhealthy obsession with cologne. Wait
a second.
Very,
is
very
there a
unhealthy
healthy obsession with cologne? I think cologne is unhealthy. So go ahead.
Okay. So with all of that in mind, now that you know more about this man, I guess you could call him, than you did before, is he still your favorite forging tabler? Do you want to take that back? Do you want to, ascend a different person to the throne?
He still is my favorite forging tabler just because of his sound theology. And I mean, how much courage does it take to mention such what ought to be a deep, dark, hidden secret in your life? But apparently this brother believes the gospel so much that he would admit at a forging table that he does not just have a little bit of cologne, but he's really into it.
Joey, no, wait. He didn't offer up that information. I found it and I blasted him on the air and he just went with it. So it's very different. It wasn't like, hey guys, I got a confession. I have a different scent for a day of the week. Come on.
I don't know. Well, thank God you're his friend and iron sharpens iron, so you can help him out.
I'm his friend for now. It's a daily fight to figure out if I'm going to continue making that happen. But in all kidding aside, we do have a great first question, and it is from Ryan Horn, who is still apparently the forging tabler that Joby loved. It's this: does it make any sense to deny predestination, but then assure a non-believer that God has a plan for their lives?
The word predestination, the way I would like to ask it is this. Do you believe that God has a plan for your life? I don't know the person that doesn't say, of course he does. Okay. Do you think he's making it up as he goes? Or do you think he's surprised by it? Or do you think God is outside of time, so God knows what that plan or that destiny is? People are like, yeah, I think that. Well, then by definition, you believe in that God has predestined you for whatever he has for you. So that's what I would say.
So with that as well, on the predestination side, you made a comment to a friend of mine recently. They went to your church, and do you remember the comment you made? I don't want to say her name because I didn't get permission, but it was something along can you grow taller? What was the context? I got it a little jumbled up.
Yeah, she said something to the effect of, well, based on my free will or because I have free will. And I was like, do you? Completely free? She said, completely free. I was like, cool. Be taller. Will yourself to be taller. Oh, wait a minute. You can't. You were preordained to be however tall that you are. She didn't love it, but it's just true.
Okay. You know who else doesn't love it? People that can't grow beards. Because guys that have this patchy beard thing going on, I'll tell them, hey, man, all you got to do is sit in a room and just concentrate real hard. And then, you'll be able to sprout it. And I give them that. And every now and then they actually go and try that. Or they got all kinds of things, Joby. They got oils you can put on your face. They got things that you can scratch your face with to try to get beard growth. It's kind of the same thing. So if we had free will, yeah, it'd be cool to be taller. But I think a lot of people would rather have a beard.
Do you know why I have a beard?
I have no idea.
Because I'm not a woman and I'm not a child.
Hey, and men have beards. So with that in mind, Ryan Horn doesn't have a beard. And so is he still your number one forging tabler? That's probably the last time I'll ask this episode, because he doesn't have any hair at all.
Yeah, based on the hair situation and the cologne situation, he's a constant reminder of the brokenness of humanity that we live in and what Jesus came to do. Imagine his beard in heaven. He's going to smell great on his own, and he's going to have probably the best beard in heaven.
Okay, that may be one of the best quotes we've ever gotten on the show, but yeah, I just the mental image. I got to put that into an AI pic generator later on. Ryan Horn with a beard. It's gonna be like wrapping around his body. He'll probably just like sleep on his own beard pillow, so that'll work out well. All right, so next question. This one's from me. Is cannibalism a sin?
Cannibalism.
Yeah.
Yes, it is a sin.
So I'm not asking because I'm curious. I'm asking because I had the thought the other day. It was like, yeah, we all think cannibalism's like wrong. And you think about these, ancient tribes or tribes even today that still perform this act. But why, biblically, I guess, is cannibalism wrong? By the way, I'm not pro cannibalism to anybody clipping this out later. It's just a question.
Because our bodies in and of themselves are sacred as image bearers of God. And so to treat something that is sacred as common is sacrilegious, and I think sacrilege would fall into the sinful category. And the purpose of it is that you are commodifying an image bearer of God, or you are commodifying someone that Jesus died on the cross for to use for your own benefit. And so there's not a big distance between like prostitution and cannibalism. It's just to use somebody else's flesh for your own benefit or your own desire. So, sin.
Okay. I'm going to ask this, and if you don't want to answer it, if you don't want to go there, I've already told you previously, you get full veto power for any subject matter, and we can just edit this whole section out. But you used a word that pinged my ears there, and it was commodify. And when I did my episode on in vitro fertilization, one of my concerns was the commodification of the human body, where you are commodifying sperm, eggs, and the wombs of women in order to reach a desired end goal. For some people, it's the overwhelming desire to have progeny, to have a child, and they're using whatever scientific means to do that, really without the regard for the human beings that will be killed in the process. And then you have people that are doing it because they want an accessory. They're a gay couple and they want the accessory of a child and they don't want to adopt one. And so they want to donate sperm, buy an egg, rent a womb, and then get a baby, 9 months later that's handed to them in a hospital bed and hospital room. So do you see it the same way as the commodification of human beings and the elements that make up what a human is?
I think in the most extreme cases that you were talking about, absolutely. Like if you're trying to order a child like you would out of a catalog,
right? Then
I do think you're playing God in a way that is very, very unhealthy.
Which certainly happens,
I do think, especially coming out of your, a lot of people here at 1122 listen to Undaunted.Life, and a lot of them didn't love that one about IVF. And I get it, totally. I do think there are a bunch of people that are trying to the best of their ability to do a version of IVF in the most God-honoring way possible, meaning they're only fertilizing an egg or two, and if both fertilize, they're obviously keeping them. So there was a bunch of the, I think, legitimate cautions that you had that they are completely taking into account. Does that make sense? But what you just described, 100%, like, if you're going in saying, all right, this is the color hair, this is the color eyes, this is how tall, this is the athletic ability. I mean, isn't that what Hitler was trying to do? Like create this perfect pure race. Yep. So that there's a real problem with that in the commodification of human beings. So again, in the extreme, I completely agree. And I also completely agree with you warning people to think about some things they've probably never thought about. And there could be a slippery slope in that direction. So you better fight like crazy to make sure if you or a family member were to do the IVF thing, you would have to war against a whole bunch of potential problems. But it is very, very complicated. And the further away you are from something, the simpler the solution seems. And I don't know a whole lot about it, so I don't think I'm an expert to talk about it. But for sure, in the extreme, anytime we commodify another human being, I mean, this is why lust is such a big sin. And this is why Jesus says, if you've ever lusted after a woman in your heart, then you've already committed adultery, because what you've done is you're not treating her as a human being that Jesus died for, an image bearer of God, or even potentially a sister that Jesus, has redeemed. You're just treating her as a commodity to be used up for your own good. And
right.
it's murderous. It's awful. It's covenant breaking.
Well, and to that end with the IVF stuff, a lot of people that got mad about my IVF episode were getting mad at things I was not saying. So because it took me 45 minutes to spell out my very carefully worded and crafted argument about IVF and how I don't think Christians should utilize it. And what people heard was you don't think people that struggle with getting pregnant should have children. I was like, no, because people either didn't listen to the episode at all because they read the title and the title made them mad, or they listened to the first 5-10 minutes and didn't give the full breadth and depth of my argument any consideration. But it's also a technological limitation of what we see with most IVF facilities right now, which is that they're not making one egg to fertilize and implant. They're making 8 because it's inefficient and expensive to just do 1 or 2. So they do 8 knowing that maybe 1 or 2 will survive. And so that's the extra consideration that I think people didn't have. And again, I need to remind people, my personal family, my extended family, people that are very close to me, have had their families expanded by IVF technology. And I happen to love the children that have been created via that process. The issue is the eggs that are left over that they are going to donate. At some point, there will be breaking news, and I don't know when, of IVF facilities trashing or donating the tissue of literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of image bearers of Christ because there's no more space in the freezer. And that's the thing, that it's a downstream consequence, but it's a consequence nonetheless.
So I think this is a good discussion. And you and I personally have talked about this. Right. I applaud the episode, even though I do think you were talking. I have a lot of questions. I think there could be a really robust dialogue about it. I know that there's a guy in our city who is a believer and is trying to do IVF in such a way that addresses all of your concerns. Okay, even with all that said. So when people at our church heard the episode and were upset, well, mostly they were upset because they were going through it and they felt attacked or whatever. Okay, fine, no problem. The question is, are you going to continue to do ministry with this guy? Of course. Even if I don't agree with everything you think, I don't care. Jesus is our Lord. We're brothers. Half of what's wrong with this country is people can't have conversations about things that they disagree with. Secondly, I think my job and your job are not the same job. I am a pastor. I start with where the sheep are and then try to take them to green pastures, take them to cool waters. You have more of a prophetic voice because you're not nurturing a group of people. I think it's a good idea for you to drop truth bombs. Sometimes it pisses people off. Sometimes it makes people cry. Sometimes it makes people go, yay, whatever. But one of the things that episode did for me was make me ask a bunch of questions about a thing that just wasn't on my radar, And I think those things are helpful. I also think when Jesus was teaching a group of people over and over and over, like the disciples, he would do a parable and then sometimes explain it. And then sometimes he would walk in and say some outlandish stuff, knowing he was leaving town. And they would be like, did he really mean gouge out your eye and chop off your hand? Yeah. And so there's actually a place for you to do that. And I don't think Sunday morning in the pulpit is the place. I do think a podcast where people decide to listen or not listen, know what they're getting. And I mean, part of the reason I listen to you all the time, even before we got to be as good of buddies as we are, is because I didn't know the kind of things you were going to raise, but you raised some stuff for me to think about that I didn't have to think about or didn't choose to think about. And I mean, oftentimes you say it in the most aggressive way possible. Okay, cool. Yeah. I mean, you just do. It's fine. It's totally fine. I think this is the right context for that. You know, Ephesians 4 says, let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, only that which is edifying for the needs of the hearer in its appropriate place. So this is the appropriate place for you to put on blast the Pope, the whatever the LGBTQ community is doing. This is the appropriate place. My place in the pulpit is to help. I got to like start where people are, where the sheep are, and then begin to feed, protect. Now I say pretty hard things, especially compared to like a normal pastor, but I'm trying to move them to truth, move them to obedience. It's just a different role. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Well, and I appreciate your commentary on it because I've never been given to subtlety. That's not really a strength of mine. But part of the thing is there's something to be said for controlled aggression. And so I look at the 2 times that Jesus cleared the temple. That was premeditated, righteous, sustained aggression. But it was under control. He didn't lose his mind and temporarily, you know, like you've had those moments in your life maybe where you got mad and punched a wall or kicked a dog or something like that. And then later you're like, I didn't even, it was like involuntary. It's like my body just reacted. That's not what I do on my show. Like, how do you build out a 45-minute response to the IVF thing? Like, that wasn't like a knee-jerk reaction to a question.
Right.
When I criticize the Pope or criticize Pride Month, the LGBTQ thing, people like Andy Stanley and other pastors and things like that, these are not things that I just in the moment. Someone asks me, "What do you think of this person?" I go, "Well, let me tell you," and then I just like fire off. These are things that are very carefully considered before I release them. And you're right. There is a time and a place for things like that. The pulpit on a Sunday morning is not a time for a political rally. Some, Trump acolytes should really think that through as we march towards November. But that's just something for all of us to consider. We should probably get into the next one because I think we're 2 questions in. And that actually started with a question about cannibalism, kids. So there's your there's your lesson. You could be talking about cannibalism and somehow end up talking about something more controversial than that. But here we are on Undaunted.Life, a man's podcast. Let's keep it going. This is from an anonymous donor. Again, guys, if you want to have your question entered into this list of questions, you have to be a monthly donor, Undaunted.Life /donate. But he wanted to keep his identity, cloaked a little bit because the people that he's talking about actually listen to the show. So here we go.
Okay.
I've been very close to my cousin for a long time. He married someone that I have a hard time with. I don't trust her. She's very gossipy. She talks trash about people all the time. This has caused me to distance myself from my cousin and subsequently her. I'm afraid that if I confide in him about any of my personal issues, that he will tell his wife and then the world will know my struggles and issues shortly thereafter. I want to be close to my cousin, but his wife kind of sucks. How do I handle that?
I think it's a legitimate concern that he has. A part of what it means to be like a foxhole brother or a mat carrier or a 3 a.m. friend that you talk about is that, do I trust this person with the details of my life? And I mean, when you get married, dude, his primary allegiance is not to you, it's to his wife. So if you don't trust her, then you don't really trust him. And so you're probably right. So you can be very, very close to your cousin. You should always honor them. You should start praying for your, whatever you would call her, cousin-in-law, not about her. Quit praying that God would change her. Just start praying blessing over her. Watch what maybe happens in your heart towards her. But I also wouldn't cast pearls before swine. So if you know that the details of your life aren't trustworthy in that household, then I wouldn't share them there. So it's just, hey, man, he who walks with the wise grows wise, and a companion of fools suffers harm. So it takes a lot of wisdom to choose the people that you are going to be most vulnerable with. And just because you like a person doesn't mean that that person's qualified to be a mat carrier or a corner toter for you. They have to be a trustworthy person. The men that are in my life, there was a time when one of my guys, man, very similar situation. I didn't trust his wife. I did trust him though, but he's not even in my life anymore. I think because of their relationship, he's bounced. Is not even at our church. So, but the men that I trust the most, the men that carry the corners in my life, do they have the godliest wives I've ever met? I mean, I trust these women as much. as I do. In fact, I would hope that what I share with him, he shares with her, because the wives has such godly advice. I think I would benefit from it. So if you don't think that's the case, then again, love your cousin, be friends with your cousin. He just might not be on your ultimate inner circle.
Hey guys, real quick. If you're anything like me, you are constantly on the lookout for high quality products that are actually made here in America by American hands. The problem is that a lot of American companies have outsourced their labor overseas, so it's an American company, but it's supporting people that don't live here. So I've always wanted to partner with an American company that prioritizes America, American workers, and making all of their materials here in this country. That's why I want to remind you that we are partnered with Origin. Origin is an apparel company based in Maine, and they are focused on getting as much manufacturing back to the United States as they can possibly do. What do they make? They make the best jiu-jitsu gis on the planet, and these are the only jiu-jitsu gis that are made completely in America. They also make jeans. Yes, they're stretchy and awesome. They also make amazing hunting gear, and I know you guys love your Kuiu and your Sitka, but those companies use overseas labor, and they don't do that to help you guys out. They do that to increase their profit margins. Origin also makes boots and work boots, and yes, that does include steel-toe boots. And in the fall of last year, they launched a line of everyday clothing. Their Versa pants are their everyday pants, and they are just especially phenomenal. They also make other outdoor clothes and workout clothes, and they're launching new apparel stuff all the time. If you haven't already, you need to check them out and support a company that supports America and America's workers. Try Origin out today by going to www.originusa.com. That's originusa.com. Use the promo code Undaunted to get 10% off of your order. Again, that's originusa.com. Promo code Undaunted to get 10% off of your order. Yeah, and that's the thing that I got from this guy when I went back and forth with him, is that he was a bit heartbroken because his cousin was like a foxhole guy to him, and he felt like he lost him when his cousin gained her. But I gave him very similar advice. I was like, dude, he's not married to you. Like, he's not going to have to give an account someday for how well he was your cousin. Like, he is going to have to give an account for how good of a husband he was. And, if kids subsequently come, performing headship of the household. And so, but I also told him to just be very open and honest with his cousin. Like, hey, if push comes to shove and this is your dude, this is one of your foxhole guys, one of your 3 a.m. buddies, one of your mat toters. If that's one of those guys, you just have to be honest with him without attacking his bride. You can just say, hey man, sometime when you haven't been around, I've heard your wife say things that weren't so positive about other people. If I share personal things with you, are you going to share that with her? Because I'm just afraid that it might not stay with her. And that's a fair way of approaching it without pointing your finger at her and calling her a bad name and those types of things. So there is a way to traverse that. But we need to get to the next question here. This is should be an easy and fun one. This is from Jake Winkler of the Forging Table, who is not your favorite. Everybody knows that by now. What is the best sporting event you've ever attended live? And what is the one sporting event that you want to see live that you haven't seen? So best sporting event you've been to and seen live. What's one that you haven't been to that you want to go to?
I have not been to a UFC fight yet, so I definitely want to do that. I had a couple of opportunities, and then both times I had like dad duty with my daughter. And so it was a really sweet thing because she knew I had like front row tickets from Dana White to sit with some of my NFL buddies, and it was going to be awesome. And she had like a daddy-daughter dance, and she was like, are you going to miss it? And I was like, there's no chance, baby. There's no chance. It was great.
Yes,
she
sweetheart, I'm going to miss it.
But no, not a chance. I sent my son, and everybody thought he was a pro fighter. It was great. Man, I mean, the greatest sporting event ever is the Georgia Bulldogs. And so just whenever they go and roll up on people at Sanford Stadium. So pick your college of choice. But, I mean, you want to see people just lose their mind and get caught up in the whole thing. And I know it's all idolatry and false worship. I mean, we literally sing glory, glory to old Georgia, and I get caught up in it. So that's it. And especially I get a home game here and get to watch them beat Florida for the last few years. That's great. I'd love to go see them beat Alabama. That'd be great. But, dude, it's hard to beat a good college football game. And I'd like to go see a UFC fight.
Well, so I've been to one UFC fight here in Oklahoma City. I'd like to see one in Vegas. I think that'd be really cool. I mean, I've been to some World Series games, and I think I've been to 6 World Series games. So that's pretty cool. Just the pageantry of October and October baseball and all that, even though every single time I went, the team I preferred to win lost. So if you want me to sway the World Series, like just send me to wherever you want me to go for the benefit of your team. But I would love, and this is just kind of where it's always been in my head, I want to go to a night game at LSU. That like
yeah.
a football game. Like that's what I want to do. I want to eat gumbo and jambalaya all afternoon. I want to watch Cajun people act a fool. And then I don't even care who they play, but I want it to be an SEC game. So like LSU Georgia, LSU Bama, LSU Florida, something like that. I just think that would be cool. Like I don't know if that's the coolest spot in the SEC. I don't know what other schools you've gone to, but I've heard Ole Miss is awesome. I've heard, Florida and Gainesville is awesome. I've heard Athens is awesome. Like, well, I guess how many of the SEC schools have you attended games at? And like, is there one that's like, hey, this one's pretty dope?
Just from what I've heard, LSU night game, there is nothing better and nothing can compare. So you are absolutely right. LSU at night, especially big game. Yeah, a lot of liquid courage. They start very early. It gets pretty ruckus. I mean, literally, it's registered on the Richter scale multiple times from them cheering. It's moved the earth to the point that geologists are freaking out.
Well, Joby, I know you got some connections. So the next time Georgia plays at LSU at night, not the 2:30 game. I want a night game, damn it. So like, let's make that happen. All right. Next one here. This is another one from a Forging Tabler. This is from Eric Browning. What has your experience been with family worship? How has that played out in your home? Are there any barriers to that for the Martins? Yeah,
it's pretty terrible in my house. It has never gone the way that we had hoped it would go. So I would be very, very cautious of trying to live up to some sort of external expectation that you have of how it's supposed to go. I mean, typically, I'm trying to force it. One of my daughter's into it. Gretchen's on her phone. JP's not even there. It's just not. It's caused more frustration than anything. For us, what has been way better is just family dinner, and we bring up topics of life and Bible there versus like family worship. Probably the only time it went good was during COVID, when we would be, we would record all of our services on like a Tuesday and then broadcast them on the weekend. And so we would do family worship there together in our living room. That was probably the best version. And for a long time, I would feel like such a failure. And, I'm the pastor and this should be going good. And it just was terrible. And so I talked to a bunch of my buddies who have kids that love Jesus. So the point, one of the things you got to pay attention to, don't ever get the means in front of the ends. My friend Larry Osborne, a pastor out in California, he talks about too many times Christians get the fruit confused with the watering schedule. So like they look at your lawn and be like, your lawn's awesome. What's your watering schedule? And then they go apply the same watering schedule to their lawn and it doesn't turn out right. And they're all focused on the means, not the end. So the end is that you would raise children in the admonition of the Lord, that you would train them up in the way they should go, that you would disciple your kids. And discipleship worship is definitely a part of that. And so you just got to do what works for your family. And like in my family, I have two very, very different children, very, very different. And so to try to make them like conform to a pattern, especially as they get older, probably the best thing in regards to like catechizing my children of anything, especially when they were small, is prayer time at night. I marked out a big chunk of time to pray over and with my children at night. One, as they get a little bit older, they try to trick you. They think they're like getting to stay up late, so they just will do whatever it takes to get the conversation going. And they know if they talk about crap, I'm going to put them to bed. But if they talk about Jesus or the Bible or questions, we can stay up as long as they want. And what they don't realize is that they're being covertly discipled by their own trickiness, And then I prayed specific scriptures over my children that they still have memorized because they heard it 300 nights a year, So just figure it out. But see, even that. So what people could do is people could hear the prayer thing and then try it with their kids and it not go good and they feel like a failure. That's not the point. The point is to make disciples. So get really focused on the fruit, not the watering schedule.
I like that. And it's very important for everyone to know that you have your context and you have your family and your personalities and your schedules. And so, like, I remember my wife talking about when she was a kid at softball tournaments. I mean, because again, for whatever reason, a tournament can't be completed on Saturday. You have to play your first game Friday, 17 games on Saturday, but you have to somehow still play one or two on Sunday. And so they, most families would just skip church because, it's summertime. Let's go to the baseball game. Let's go to the lake. Let's go to whatever. But her family would always, no matter what city they were in, they would go to a small local church in their chosen denomination. And like she would be there in her braids and in her jersey, and, her cleats were in the car, and they would drive from church and then go back and do their thing. So that's practical for some people. For some people, it's not. You have the church online capability, and you'd be the first person to tell me that you can't just do church online every week as opposed to driving down the street and going to an actual building with real people in it. But if you're on the road, or, if you're at that baseball tournament or something like that, that's a way where you can still be attached to the body, even though it's still just tangential. So you got to follow whatever the flow is for you and your family.
Yeah, that's a really good example, though. No, like kids sports is a good example. There's a bunch of pastors right now bashing travel ball, right?
Right. It's very popular.
Who usually bashes that? It's either the kids that couldn't make it because they weren't good enough, the parents of those kids, or the parents of the freak athletes that don't need it because they're so good. Okay, all right. But it shouldn't be trashing travel ball. It ought to be like your posture towards it. Do you know how many kids I've baptized from my kids' travel ball teams? Like we tried to the best of our ability not to bow down to the idol of travel. We just tried to. It's the only lost people I knew, man. So we tried to leverage it for the good news of the gospel. And so, I mean, all of JP's college roommates were on his Little League All-Star baseball team, and I baptized every single one of them. I mean, they all are Christians. Their whole families, so just be careful about drawing a target around something and aiming at it, figure out the why behind that.
Well, yeah, and it's not zero sum because I've shared, a meme before where it was like some parents are more concerned about making their kids an athlete as opposed to making them a disciple. It was essentially something like that. And so what some people heard is Kyle's anti-athletics for children. It's like, no, dummy. What are you talking about? Like, but it's like if you put so much more time, effort, and money in making your kid like 1% better at baseball, and you spend none of that time like dealing with their soul or any heart level issues or things that could affect, I don't know, their eternity, then that's problematic. And I would suggest that you maybe have got, your, things out of whack in terms of your household. All right. Next question here is from Roger, another donor. Thank you, Roger, for being a donor. What would be your argument to a pastor on the complementarian view that women should not hold the office of pastor and should not be preaching or teaching from the pulpit on Sunday mornings? Also, in what capacity is it appropriate for women to lead, teach in the church? For background, my pastor's wife has taken more of a leadership role in the church over the last couple of years. She is now listed as an associate pastor and preaches on Sunday mornings about once every 2 to 3 months.
Man, my understanding.
Step in it, Joby. Let's go. We've already talked about cannibalism and IVF. We might as well step in this one too.
Let's go. My argument for complementarianism would be the New Testament. That's what it teaches. But I get it's a little more complex than that. My understanding of the scriptures are that men and women are created completely equally under God, but with different roles. In the home and in the family, in the church family and in your particular family. So the role of pastor, elder is for men according to the New Testament. I mean, we could go through Titus and Timothy and we can go through all the places. Just like a woman cannot be a dad. I don't care. Even if she does some things that typically dads do, a woman can't be a dad. A woman can't be a husband. A woman can't be the head of the house because God has ordained that to be so. My understanding, and historically for 2,000 years, the church's understanding until very, very recently in some places, is the same role applies for men as the pastor, elder of the church. It pretty much comes down to this. Paul says, I do not permit a woman to teach or have authority over men. Do you think that means or and? I think it means and. At the Church of 1122, we have women in ministry at every level except for the role of pastor elder. But we have women lead, because my view of the New Testament is that Jesus had women in ministry with him, that in the early church, people like Phoebe and Lydia had significant places of leadership. But if you put that teaching and authority together, that's the role of the pastor. Therefore, that has been reserved for men. Why? Because God can do whatever he wants to do. I don't know. Why do we have 2 feet, not 11? It's just because that's how he designed us. So the reason is because of his design, not because of, well, I know somebody that's better at you. Bro, I bet there's 10,000 women that could do a better job at the job I have right now. That's not the point. God has anointed and appointed me to do it and designed men to play that role.
Well, I mean, there's certainly more that we can talk about as far as that goes. We could do an entire episode just on that. But even just hearing him describe, and I truncated it down so I could ask a question to you. Even just hearing him describe it, you could tell it wasn't like, oh, this was a very strong, biblically based male pastor that just thought it would be a good idea to bring his wife along. It seemed like he was a little bit more of a passive, a little bit more of a pushover, and his wife had one of those big, overbearing personalities, and she started elbowing her way into the ministry that her husband was leading, and he just was acquiescing to kind of keep her quiet and keep her satisfied. And you do see that situation a lot, where you have these men that are abdicating their own responsibility and ignoring what we see in terms of lessons of scripture because they don't want to make their wives mad, and it's to the detriment of the entire flock that they're going to have to give an account for someday, that how they've led. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, and again, you and I have talked about this before. What I think is irrelevant. What I'm trying to do is just do what I think the Bible says to do. Does it cause problems for me? For sure. Oh my gosh, man. Yeah, people throw shade on me all the time because we're a complementarian church. Okay, but one day I'm not going to have to stand before you and give an account. I'm doing that right now. One day I do have to stand before the Lord. And if I get this thing wrong, I want to get it wrong because I'm just trying to do what the words in the Bible say, not because I'm trying to acquiesce to a cultural movement.
All right, very good.
I will tell you this too. One more second.
Yeah.
Everybody I know that has begun to ordain women in ministry, it's the same thought process that the affirming church has for the LGBTQ people.
Right.
So think about it. It's like, well, Jesus never said anything specifically about it, which isn't true, but that's what they say. I know what these words say, but they don't mean that. I know somebody that's a better example of this, whether it's a pastor or a same-sex relationship, a better example than the Christians are, and my own personal feelings and belief and experience is like God told me something specifically. It's the exact same argumentation. That makes me really, really nervous. And I saw it all the way back in the 90s when I was in seminary. I was like, wait a minute. This is the exact same hermeneutic that you are using with the text. I honestly think what's happening, I think there are some people out there just doing the best that they know how to do, and that's just the tradition they grew up in, and they didn't know any better. A lot of what I see is, this is what I want, and I don't love what the Bible says, so I'm going to shift what the Bible says to what I want. In any area in my life where that's happening, I want some people to point that out, and I want to shift my life to what the Bible says, not the other way around.
Well, certainly. And here's a pro tip. If someone claims to have new knowledge, revelatory knowledge about the language used in documents that were written somewhere between 2,000 and 5,000 years ago, you might look askance at that and just be like,
right.
I think it sounds like you're making that up to agree with your political priors. And that's what I said, even at my abortion talk at Church 1122. I said, this is a category of belief systems, because nobody is like pro-Israel, pro-gun, like pro closing the borders and all that. And then they're also like anti-abortion. Like those things are, well, actually I said that wrong, but like if they're pro-abortion, if they like those things, they're also, pro-Hamas and pro-BLM and pro all those different things. Like you're attacking a worldview when you attack one of the categories. And this is just one of those categories. Now, Joby, we are short on time.
Hold on, one more thing. I just got to say this. So you've been here, you've been to 1122, you've worked here, you've done some stuff here. And our church is full of very competent, very smart, very gifted female leaders.
Amen.
And they serve at the highest level, just not pastor. And what you've noticed is they are not concerned about any kind of title that they have to have. They are just concerned about the mission of God for his church.
That's right.
Man or woman, regardless, white or black, those are the kind of people I want to be working with, not the kind of people that are looking for what kind of title they get to receive or position they get to sit in, but the church that they get to serve. And so, you know, when you read the Bible, you get really focused on Jesus and not the position that you get, then things, they just go a lot better. And so kudos to the females that I get to work with.
Yeah, I mean, I've interacted with a lot of the women that work at your church, and they've all been fantastic and incredibly easy and lovely to work with. And here's the other thing. I've been in a lot of corporate environments, and people typically lead with their business card or they lead with their title. Hi, I'm the executive vice president. Nice to meet you. Hello, I'm the top salesman of the quarter, that type of thing. Yeah. I don't know what anyone's title is. I know what they do. Like, good. I have an idea of like the area of influence they have, but I've never been introduced to somebody like I've had to ask like, hey, who is this person? Like, can they do the things that I need to have them do so that I can, you know, do what I need to do? And so that's a good thing. It speaks to a very positive culture. So kudos to you for that. So we got time. Well, we don't have time, but I got a couple of more questions. This one's been burning a hole in my pocket. Well, I guess you could say it like that, but anyway, it's because I've had 2 babies that have died in the womb, and so I'm very concerned about this. But here we go. If a baby dies in the womb, do they automatically go to heaven to be with God, or does election still come into play? And then with that, how tangibly and literally can an unborn baby experience hell and eternal damnation? And I don't mean like, how could that happen? I don't mean it like that. I mean like, how does a baby that's never seen the light of day, that doesn't understand feelings or any of that, how could they experience hell in the tormented way as it's described?
John Piper explains this way better than I could explain it. So go to Desiring God and ask the same question, and he's got like a little 15-minute deal. He walks through Romans chapter 1 and the character and nature of God and comes to the conclusion that the unborn baby goes to heaven because of the grace of God in their life. And he's like, if you could add more points to Calvinism, he would adopt them. You know what I mean? So he would say in God's sovereignty, not only is he sovereign over salvation, but he knows which babies ain't going to make it anyway. And those go to heaven. And so again, he roots it in Romans chapter 1 about God being a righteous and gracious God.
So would it be, and this might just be a little bit semantic, or maybe not semantics, would it be because they weren't born into sin because they were not born at all?
Yeah, I mean, that is a part of it. I don't think that means outside the womb born, but I do think that means like they have no opportunity to even walk in the sin nature that they inherited from their parents. But again, because he talks about the goodness of God, the kindness of God, the justice of God, that he would be in the camp of lose a baby goes to heaven. I'm in that camp too. This is a little like a Bible study hack. Sometimes you get into complicated questions like that with very complicated answers. How do you know the answer? One of the things I find helpful is to find the people that I agree with on virtually everything else and see what they think. That is very helpful for me. So Dr. Piper is one that I often go to, and his website, Desiring God, is incredible because it asks all kinds of questions like this.
Shout out to all the pastors out there with Asperger's, because apparently Joby's going to agree with everything that you ever say. All right, Joby, last question of the day, perhaps the most controversial. We'll see how it works out. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
Oh, man. No, it's a hot dog. I think it's a unique category. Like a unicorn ain't a horse. It has characteristics like a horse, but it's not a deer. But it also has an antler or a horn, but it's a unicorn. So I think the hot dog is the unicorn of the sandwich cosmos, but it is not a sandwich.
I'm going to try to sway you.
Sideways.
No. I'm going to have to try. I'm going to sway you in this moment because I've thought This has lived rent free in my brain. So you think about baby Hitler and I think about hot dogs because categories are important. You wouldn't say Reuben's not a sandwich. No, Reuben's just a type of sandwich, right?
It is. Yeah.
So I know there is a definition of sandwich, and somebody has broken this down for me before where they were like, hey, bread, there's got to be bread separation. And it was like, Lord's sandwich, 300 years ago called it this or that. This is my argument. A hot dog is an open face sandwich because it's bread that's been cut but not separated. It's been open and the meat's been placed on top. You've had an open face roast beef before. You've had, open face something or other with, cheese melted or something like that. So I am firmly planted my flag in the hot dog is a sandwich. It just so happens to be categorically an open face sandwich. What say you?
Would you call avocado toast a sandwich?
No, because it's not meat.
But no, it's egg. You have an egg sandwich.
Give me an egg sandwich. I'll have an open face sandwich. I'll eat one right now.
So in as much as a hot dog is a sandwich, then avocado toast with an egg on it is a sandwich.
Well, gosh darn it, Joby, we're just not going to agree on this one, so we should probably leave it there. You got anything else for the audience before we let you get out of here?
No, sir. You've been crushing it lately, man. Keep it up.
All right, we'll talk soon.
All right, peace.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. Wherever you're listening to this, please subscribe, rate, and leave us a positive 5-star review. If you want me to come speak live at your event or on your podcast, just shoot me an email to info@Undaunted.Life. That's info@Undaunted.Life. Follow us on Instagram and like us on Facebook, and check out our website for everything else, including how to donate to keep more content like this coming your way. Just go to www.Undaunted.Life. And as always, we want to thank the band Holy Name for allowing us to use their music for our content. The music on this podcast is their song Perpetua, which is off their self-titled debut album on Face Down Records. The links are in the description. I'm your host, Kyle Thompson. Remember, keep pushing back darkness, keep forging spiritual, mental, and physical resilience, keep seeking the Lion of Judah.